Good afternoon. I'm Vince Palmieri, President and founder of Asian Pacific Community Awareness, and I'm here this afternoon with David Brog, who's running for Assembly District 37. David, good afternoon.
Hey,
And
Vince.
please introduce yourself to our viewers.
So I'm David Brog. I live in Summerlin, raising my two kids in Summerlin, and I'm so concerned about the future of our state that I'm running for Assembly. If I take a minute to explain the stakes of this race, I'd love to go ahead and do that.
I would like you to do it, but first, for some of our viewers don't really know what an assemblyman does or what the responsibilities are.
Yeah. So every state has a legislature. So the nation has the Congress in Washington with the House of Representatives and the Senate, a bicameral legislature, and so does every state. So in Nevada, our legislature we don't call it the House of Representatives, we call the lower body the Assembly. Then we have a Senate. For a bill to become a law, it must pass both houses and be signed by the governor. And the governor has a veto if he doesn't like what's been passed by both houses of Congress.
I heard in your speech you mentioned about why it's important, and I agree with you 100%, why it's important to elect the right people. I call it the down ticket. A lot of people have a habit of leaving the down ticket empty.
Yes.
And if you can explain why it's important to vote for our local leaders and what it does, no matter who's president, if our local leaders are the right type of people, Nevada is safe.
Correct. Yeah, people ignore this. Your life, your quality of life in Nevada is determined to a large extent by local politics, by what our legislators in Carson City pass, by what our governor signs. This is your environment. So everyone's focused on the presidential campaign. Everyone's focused on national politics. But we're at a turning point in our state, and we can go in one of two directions. We can go the way of California, really being governed by an extreme ideological fringe, passing laws that increase crime and make education poorer and make it harder for businesses to thrive and force businesses to flee. We can go in that direction, or we can go in the direction of other states that are safer, more hospitable to business, better education. That's going to be determined in this election. Basically, we need to flip at least one assembly seat from Democrat to Republican to make sure Governor Lombardo, our governor, has a veto. Our governor used this veto 75 times last session to veto a really extreme agenda that would have had the effect of turning Nevada into California when it comes to all of these things: taxes, business climate, education, safety, crime. He used it to make sure we had a check on the legislature. He made sure we had centrist, common sense government. If he loses that veto, we lose centrist, common sense government. We are governed by an ideological extreme, and it's not going to be good for our families or for our businesses, for our communities. So whether or not he has a veto will come down to, very likely, whether we can flip an assembly seat from Democrat to Republican. My assembly seat, my race, District 37, is the one that we're most likely able to flip. So in a sense, whether we're governed from the center or whether we're governed by an ideological extreme that turns us into California, comes down to my assembly race. It's critical I win this race.
I'm a person about solutions because I was taught when I first started working for Citibank is, Vince, don't come to me with a problem. Come to me with the problem and the solution. So I'd like to ask you, which of these issues is closest to your heart, and what solution would you have to fix it?
Yeah. My top three issues are crime, education, and the business environment. Among other things, I'm a father to two young kids. I want to make sure they're safe. I want to make sure they have decent education opportunities. We're not rich. These opportunities have to be available to everyone. And then I want to make sure, this is my big dream, that we have enough opportunity right here in Vegas, right here in Nevada, that when my children are older, they don't need to leave us to seek opportunity elsewhere, the way I left my little community to seek opportunity elsewhere. I want those things. If I'm elected to the legislature, I'm going to be in a minority. Democrats have control of the legislature. So it's going to mean two things. One, I need to work with common sense Democrats to make sure we pass common sense legislation that will reverse past excessive legislation that was too soft on crime, took away choice from parents when it came to education, and brought too stifling a net of regulations upon our businesses. These are all excesses that were passed when there wasn't a check on the legislature. So I'm going to hopefully work with common sense people on both sides of the aisle to improve these things. But most of all, I need to make sure our governor has a veto, because if the legislature is controlled by Democrats, and if they are controlled by an ideological extreme, they're going to pass these things. They're not going to work with common sense centrists like me. We need to make sure the governor can force them back and veto their excessive legislation, and watch out that our state does not get worse when it comes to these things. In time, we need to make sure we undo the mistakes of the past and build a much better path forward.
I agree with you. I think, to me, education is the foundation for everything.
It is.
Without a good education, individuals cannot find a good job, good paying job. Without quality education, we cannot attract the right type of business. You said you're for business.
Yes.
We need to attract a different type of business in Vegas, not just be hospitality.
That's
and we
right.
can't attract that unless we have the right type of education.
You're exactly right about that, Vincent. It's important to note, businesses are fleeing the climate in California brought about by an extreme ideological legislature. They're fleeing, but they're flying over Nevada, going to Texas, going to Tennessee. And I ask people, why is it we're not getting our fair share of these businesses right here? We're right next door. And the answer is education, education, education. People tell me our workforce is not sufficiently well trained to support these businesses. Education. And then they're telling me that the executives in these companies don't want to move here because they don't want to send their kids to our terrible schools. Education. So education is important in its own right, because it's the only way that our children will have a future. It's their birthright. We are entitled to give it to them. But it's also critical if we want to diversify our economy and make sure there are opportunities for our children down the road. So it's a top priority. That's why I'm for parental rights in education, and also some competition, so that the public schools that are failing have to work a little harder and compete with the private schools. My opponent in this race, and unfortunately many Democrats, fight those things. They fight parental rights, they fight school choice, school competition, and that's bad for everyone.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time, and I'd love to hear another one of your speeches in the future, because it's not every day that we hear people running for office that have common sense ideas and have vision. So in closing, what would you like our viewers to know you?
I think you put your finger on it. I'm a father with a mortgage, worried about raising kids, educating kids, keeping them safe, and making sure they have opportunities down the road. I'm a common sense centrist. So I'm a Republican. I'm running as a Republican to preserve the veto of our Republican governor. But ultimately, really, I'm a common sense guy who wants to make sure that we're not all captive of and governed by an ideological extreme that's in control of our state legislature in Carson City. So if you share these concerns and struggles, I want to talk to you, I want to meet you, I want to earn your vote, and together I want to make sure this is a state where we can raise our families in safety with great education and great opportunities. That's not what's happening right now.
Thank you, David. I just want to add one thing to our viewers. This is America. Many of you have come from different parts of the world where you didn't have the opportunity to elect your officials. Here we do. So it's up to us to put the right people in office. So we need to get out to vote. This is why Asian Pacific Community Awareness does these videos. We want to give you the information so you can make the right decision on the right candidate to vote. So we hope you all get out to vote come November and turn not only America but Nevada into a great state. David, thank you very much. God bless you and your children, and may God bless Israel.
Oh, thank you, Vince. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.